Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing well, staying healthy, enjoying life and must be planning to improve your life. Here we are to do so. Here daily we read a chapter of a novel to develop reading habit to improve our English, including reading, writing, listening, speaking, vocabulary at the same time enhancing our knowledge. As we know, reading is the best practice to develop all these things which help us in many ways. And reading could be one of the good hobby to make a change in ourselves. As we have heard from many prominent personality that books change their life and values, widen their knowledge, we can live other lives, experience and learn from their mistake. Why to commit same mistake if we can learn from them and improve our life? So join me in this journey to become best version of ourselves. Before starting, I would love to hear your thought in comment section. Remember to like, share with your loved one to change their life as well, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Press the icon Press the bell icon for the daily updates. So today we are going to read the chapter 10 named The Power of Chapter 10. It is part of novel of Like It Happened Yesterday, which is written by Ravinder Singh. So let's read this chapter and see what is there for us.
Of Chapter 10. More than half of the curriculum of Class 9 had been covered. Winter had set in nicely. The red COLR'd school sweaters were out of the trunks and on us, brightening the otherwise bland navy blue and white color combination of the school uniform. The ones that had been pulled out of the trunk very recently, and not yet put out in the sun, smelled of naphthalene balls. To get out of bed early in the morning had become challenging. And this challenge had led to a significant drop in the school's attendance. Every day there were a few students who would skip class if not for the entire day, then definitely the first period. This kind of absence from the class required the student to submit a leave or a late-coming application. Interestingly, none of the leave applications would mention the real reason, i.e., the student was too lazy to wake up on chilly mornings. While one leave application might have narrated a kind-hearted story of saving a stray puppy from dying on the road, another might describe in detail how the chain of the bicycle had slipped out of the wheel. Most of us were smart enough to write applications with new and unique reasons for being late, but there was a bunch of students who defined the heights of laziness. They were too lazy to even change their reasons for being late in their subsequent applications. Gurpreet, who sat next to me in the left row and seldom took baths on winter mornings, would simply change the animal that she claimed to have saved. At first it was a puppy, then a kitten, followed by a goat. I thought given the rate at which she was using up different animals to rescue herself, she would have been left with nothing but elephants and horses by the end of winter. When, for the fourth time, Nandu blamed the faulty chain of his bicycle for his coming late to school, the class teacher asked, "Why don't you think of changing your bicycle, Nandu?" And the class broke into a laugh. Nandu, too, shamelessly joined in the laughter, least bothered that his lie had been caught. There also used to be a few cunning minds who believed that they must keep their reasons exclusive. This bunch of students invested almost half the night in thinking up one great excuse. That was precisely why, I think, half the time they used to wake up late. At school, these kids would keep their applications highly guarded, so that no one would find out and reuse their exclusive reasons. So, the ritual of arriving late to school continued. And so did the ritual of submitting fake applications. Amid all this, there used to be some genuine cases as well. But then, it was pointless to try to prove that your application for leave was genuine. Then, one day, our class made history. We recorded full attendance for the very first time that winter. This was not a random happening. There was a reason behind this historical achievement. This was a Friday and the first subject of the day was biology. Having survived the boring section about the plant kingdom, we had arrived at the chapters on the animal kingdom. And, on that day, we were about to start Chapter 10 Reproduction. Ever since we had bought our books at the beginning of the term, the bio book was the one whose pages had been flipped through the most. And it was this chapter that we had all flipped through the pages for. Time and again at home, in privacy, I would open this book and stop at this chapter on the page where a man and a woman stood, pictured naked. I didn't believe my eyes when, for the first time, I came across this page. I wondered how something of that sort could exist in a school book. It was my first experience of seeing lifelike sketches of a man and woman without clothes on, and it was quite shocking. In spite of the fact that it was my school book, I was worried about what my parents would think of me if they got to know that this was what I was studying in my school. Therefore, I used to place that book right at the bottom of the stack of my school books in the shelf, making it as inaccessible as possible for them. So, on that exciting morning, after the prayer, unlike the other days when the students would disperse to drink water or to go to the loo before the first period started, everyone headed straight for the classroom. And then we separated into two groups, boys and girls. There was much excitement and whispering in the class, especially in the back benches, where a few of us had started making naughty jokes. The whispers were followed by raucous laughter from the boys' side, while the girls looked silently on, either ignoring us or giving us dirty looks. They wanted to make us feel as if we were unnecessarily excited about certain things that were quite normal. But we knew that, deep inside, they were equally excited. What double standards! The necessity of being able to talk about human private parts in public had given rise to code words. Creativity and imagination were at their peak when we replaced all the biological names of body parts on the naked man and woman in Chapter 10 with the names of fruits that had a close resemblance to each particular body part. Suddenly, that page looked like a fruit shop. In the end, we even gave names to the man and the woman. We called them Chintu and Babli, after popular names in our town. The madness continued. Some enterprising souls drew the figures from scratch on the last page of their notebooks, then tore off those pages and passed them on to others for review. I, too, was one of these people. When my paper landed in Sushil's hands, he looked at the drawing and shouted appreciatively, "Oh, beta. Kazabanaya Hibi Tuto. Hey, dude. Great job you have done." Right then my eyes fell on Bhavna, whose eyes were following me all this time. Now, I had a soft corner for Bhavna and had always treated her like my sister. She was looking at me with disgust, and then she said out loud, "Tu be unkitara bangaya hi na, Ravinder. You too have become like those people, haven't you, Ravinder?" I couldn't say anything in reply. I stammered, and then I stopped myself. There was no explanation. But the feeling of guilt lasted only for a minute. I looked around. Everyone other than me was busy celebrating the spirit of reading reproduction. Then suddenly someone behind me announced, "Nanda has got hold of the convent school's biology book. It has close-up visuals of the reproductive organs, something that is missing in our book." And I lost it. This was too much excitement to miss. I looked at the boys and then back at Bhavna. Half a minute back, I was wondering how to redeem myself in Bhavna's eyes. But having heard what the backbenchers had announced, my mind was immediately made up. I escaped Bhavna's glare, and, without bothering to respond to her question, ran back to the backbenchers. I tried to push my way in to treat my eyes to the close-up view. The book was snatched around from one hand to another. I'm not sure if anybody else managed to see the images very clearly, but I didn't. Suddenly, all the commotion was interrupted. The loud laughter, the dirty jokes, the chatter all died down in a second. Bio ma'am had arrived. She took her time in coming though, listening to the chaos from outside the classroom, but choosing to keep quiet. When the voices died down, she walked to her chair with grace, just as she always used to do. She was one of the most good-looking teachers in the school. She must have been somewhere in her mid-20s. All of us knew that she wasn't yet married. She looked gorgeous in her maroon chudded AAR suit, paired with matching bangles and sandals. She took her chair and then opened the attendance register. That day, every roll number she called was followed by either a yes, ma'am, or present, ma'am. As she approached the last roll number, she had a sly smile on her face. Guessed she had seen this phenomenon of cent% attendance in the previous years as well. That was the power of Chapter 10. As soon as she was through with the roll call, Bio Ma'am picked up the chalk. There was pin drop silence. The boys were almost holding their breaths. Her sandals made a tick-tock sound as she walked to write on the blackboard that had been freshly scrubbed clean by the monitor of the class. Reproduction, she wrote in her stylish handwriting. Every letter of that word, along with the scratchy sound of the chalk on the blackboard, raised ripples of excitement within us. For the girls in our class, it seemed to be yet another chapter and they prepared themselves to take notes. For us boys, it was nothing less than the morning show of an adult movie that too right after the morning prayers. We looked at each other and exchanged naughty smiles. The girls didn't dare to look anywhere and kept their eyes focused on the blackboard. Bio Ma'am progressed with the lesson. 5 minutes passed, then 10, 20, and then 30. 30 minutes. And nothing exciting happened. Absolutely nothing. Disheartening as it was, our fantasies never saw the light of day. We wanted the teacher to talk about the vital body parts, but she was wandering somewhere inside the body, in between cells and zygotes. She had gone off on a different tangent altogether. We wanted to talk about the breathtaking visible process and actions of reproduction. She, for some reason, was just not coming out of explaining the boring invisible process of what happens inside. We wanted to skim the surface of the subject matter, but she was busy diving deep into it. When the X chromosome of the father meets the X chromosome of the mother, a girl is born, she explained. Then she added, but when the Y chromosome of the father meets the X chromosome of the mother, a boy is born. She repeated that multiple times, and finally asked, and what does this show? She looked at the class from the left to the right, expecting some brave heart to answer that one. An uncomfortable silence descended upon the boys' half of the classroom, which felt cheated and was about to break down into tears. That you don't have anything interesting to teach, Sushil whispered in frustration. The boys around him giggled and brought him to everyone else's attention. Sushil Agarwal, a hardcore backbencher, was the most notorious guy in the class. There was no doubt about this tag, as it was the unanimous belief of our class, and Sushil too had accepted this fact. Girls hated him for his notorious behavior, boys loved him for his guts and the fun he used to bring to the class. And, fortunately or unfortunately, he sat next to me. What's going on there? Bio Ma'am raised the duster, pointing at us. No one at the back responded. The most we did was to stop smiling. The next moment, Archana, who was the topper of the class, grabbed Ma'am's attention by raising her hand to answer the question. Yes, Archana. Ma'am asked her to speak. That means whether the baby is a boy or a girl has nothing to do with the mother. It all depends on the father's chromosome. She finished, and stood there waiting for Ma'am to praise her intelligence. Which happened the very next moment. Very good, Archana. But uneducated people, especially in villages, blame the mother for the gender of their child. Now sit down. We found nothing interesting in this discovery. Hell, man. X and Y here also? Bio key class high key algebra key. Sushil cried out aloud, unable to hold back his frustration. Seriously, Sushil. Do something, man, we encouraged him, trying to get some fun out of his madness. So he raised his hand, interrupting the lecture. He said he had a question to ask, a rare act from him. We all waited. Yes, Sushil. Ma'am gave him the permission to ask his question. Sushil stood up, adjusted the belt of his trousers and tucked in his shirt. He tried to conceal his smile but could not, so he smiled on shamelessly. This gave the class an idea of the kind of question he was about to ask. Ma'am, how and when does Father Ka-X meet Mother Ka-X? A master stroke that was. Sushil's courage in asking this was deeply admired by all of us. On the boys' side of the classroom, laughter erupted like a volcano. We tried hard to keep it down, but that too felt like a challenge. The backbenchers celebrated this ultimate joke by tapping hard on the table. In the girls' camp, whispers of "oh shit" and "oh god" were followed by embarrassed smiles. They were probably sympathizing with the teacher. The only person who managed to hold her smile was Bio Ma'am. However, in order to bring the much-needed silence to class, she had to shout out, "Silence!" That only managed to silence half the class. She tapped the duster 3 times on the desk, until, gradually, the entire class came to a still. She had managed to handle the erupting chaos quite well. With that she regained some confidence, and went to answer Sushil's question. Bio Ma'am looked right into his eyes. When the male sperm comes in contact with the female egg, that's when either X or Y from the male meets the X of female. Is that clear? She asked sternly. At that unexpected reply, Sushil couldn't even decide whether he should nod his head up and down or shake it left and right. So our hero landed up doing both. It was hilarious. But as soon as Ma'am turned towards the blackboard, everyone turned towards Sushil. There was a smile on every face. We raised our hands to give him a thumbs up sign. This was our admiration for him. However, Sushil wasn't moved by our appreciation for him. He was still thinking over the interesting question he had asked and the boring answer that the teacher had countered it with. He looked at us, rubbed his palm against his forehead in disappointment and said, "Yakia bak was kare jaa rahi hai." Someone else in the back whispered, "Why didn't she simply say when a man and a woman have sex?" Or nahi to kia. Sushil said. All we wanted to listen to were those few titillating words, but it was only the non-sexy stuff that we were hearing. Not that we had never heard them ever, but the pleasure of hearing it from our own teacher's mouth was incomparable to anything else. Till half an hour earlier, we had imagined that she would explain how to have sex to us, that she would talk about the reproductive organs, the ones she possessed and the ones we possessed. In a nutshell, we wanted to experience spoken porn, and hell, she was treading nowhere close to it. And that's how the baby is conceived inside a female. She ended her lecture with that sensational line. Wow, the female got pregnant and there wasn't any mention of sex. What was she producing, test tube babies? I whispered to Sushil in deep frustration. People behind me overheard me and laughed. 10 more minutes were left for the bell to ring. This was usually the time for the question and answer session. Counting in the sensitivity of the topic and the presence of students like Sushil, Bio Ma'am decided it would be wise not to ask the class any question. So she let the entire class review the chapter on their own. Some of us looked at Sushil, pushing him to utilize the remaining time and ask one more question. He refused. A few chits and pieces of chalk were hurled at him. He managed to save himself from a few, but not all. He looked back, grinned and said, Baksala, main nahi pakhunga. Last try, Sushil. Make her say something dirty, someone in the crowd asked. Yes. Yes. You can do it. Everyone else cheered him on too, keeping their voices low. We treated him like he was our rock star. All that flattery worked. Sushil agreed to give it a final try. Ma'am, one doubt. Sushil said and raised his hand. The boys looked at Sushil with great expectation. The girls wanted to run out of the class or hide themselves somewhere inside their bags. They looked really embarrassed. Bio ma'am looked at her watch. She must have desperately wanted the bell to ring right then. But God was on our side. Yes. She cleared her throat half-heartedly and agreed to listen to the question. Ma'am, I am not clear on how the male sperm lands up in the female's body, he asked her with an innocent look, as if he seriously didn't know anything about it. The entire class made a muffled hoo sound in unison. Now that was a checkmate. There was no way for Bio Ma'am to escape. She had to utter that word sex which we had been wanting her to say since the beginning of the class. The excitement in the class had at once reached the extreme. By now, the girls had come to terms with the fact that they didn't have a choice but to adjust to the animal instincts of the boys. But Sushil's direct question was still difficult to digest for them. A few of the backbenchers first thought about clapping on Sushil's bravery, but changed their minds so that they could focus on what Ma'am was about to say. Bio Ma'am looked uncomfortable and irritated with the question. She felt offended, but had no choice. She stood up angrily and asked the rest of the class, anyone else has any other question? There was a silence. No one dared to ask anything. All right, then, I will answer Sushil's question, she said, crossing her arms against her chest and walking into the aisle between the girls' row and the boys' row. Sushil's eyes were twinkling and focused on her. Bio Ma'am spoke. That happens when the male reproductive organ enters into the female reproductive organ. Now, that was the best line so far in the entire period. None of us said anything. But we enjoyed what we'd heard, hoping there would be more coming our way. The teacher's eyes were fixed on Sushil. She waited for him to tell her if his doubt had been cleared. But Sushil didn't say anything, so she continued to talk, and this physical act between a male and a female is known as having sex. That's what you wanted to hear. That was an aha moment for us. 3/4 of the class would have achieved orgasm right at that sentence. Bio Ma'am paused for a while and then resumed, we all came from our parents in that way. And that's how you two were born, Sushil. And, years from now, that's how our next generation will take birth. And, years from now, that's how your children will be born. She kept waiting for Sushil to acknowledge her answer, but Sushil, all of a sudden, had gone blank. He didn't expect that sort of answer to come from a teacher. I think he was not even sure if Ma'am was through with her answer, or if there was anything else to be added. Exactly after 10 seconds of peace, when Sushil was sure that Ma'am didn't have anything further to say, he came up with a confused and funny response, oh, okay, okay. And he sat down. Our fun for that class had come to an end. The bell rang. A unanimous moan of oh, no, went around the class. Bio Ma'am wrapped up her handbag, books, and attendance register as the rest of us stared at her. Complete the homework mentioned at the end of the chapter, and in the next class we will go through chapter 11, she said before leaving. We quickly turned the pages of the textbook to see what was in chapter 11. Sushil looked back and whispered, the next chapter is on sexually transmitted diseases. He chuckled. Condoms behind us main, page 89, line number 7. And the rest of us geared up for yet another round of wild expectations and fun. It is the eve of Janmashtami. It is close to midnight and I, along with my friends, am at the Krishna Mandir in Burla. There are a lot of devotees around us. They all sit cross-legged on the floor of the sanctum of the temple. My friends and I, along with the other children, have occupied the last few rows. We are primarily in this temple to eat the delicious kheer and the temple prasad. It is a different kind of fun to meet your friends in the middle of the night at a place far away from home. The sound of hymns and the peals of the temple bell resonate in my ears. The noise of the crowd adds to the din. But nothing beats the clamour in our side of the row. We are busy cracking jokes and teasing each other in the middle of the prayers. Time and again Panditji has been requesting us, on his mic, to be silent. Every time he says so, we drop into a temporary silence, and then soon return to our not able to keep quiet instincts. The fourth time Panditji doesn't request us, he furiously commands all the children to come up to the front row. Every head turns to see us as we march in. We feel humiliated. If it was not for the kheer, we would have all left for our homes. We form a queue and, one by one, walk to the front row and occupy the part of the floor right in front of Panditji. Sitting in the front row, we have no choice but to listen to the ancient katha that Panditji is narrating. It goes back to the Dvapar Yuga. Panditji is narrating the story of Lord Krishna's birth. He is telling us how, immediately after Devki's marriage with Vasudev, Devki's brother Kansa listens to the Akashvani, a heavenly prophecy uttered from somewhere behind the thundering sky predicting the death of Kansa at the hands of Devki and Vasudev's eighth child. Terribly afraid, Kansa therefore sends the newlywed couple behind bars. The katha progresses. After describing Kansa's cruel and horrifying acts of murdering Devki's first 6 children, Panditji has finally reached the event of Krishna's birth and all that happened on that auspicious night. He ends the katha with the following words, that is how, despite Kansa's efforts, Lord Krishna did arrive in this world. Bolo Bhagwan Krishna ki, and everyone follows it with a loud Jai. It is right at this time that my friends and I realize something and start laughing about it. All of a sudden, Panditji is again made aware of our presence. Annoyed, he asks us what we are up to. One of us speaks up and tells Panditji that we have a doubt regarding the katha he has just narrated. Panditji is impressed with the attention we have paid to his storytelling. He announces that no one has ever expressed a problem in understanding any of his kathas, but, because we are children, he would love to address our doubt. And then, in our group, there is a round of hurried whispers, Tupuk na. Nahi, nahi, Tupuk. Panditji points his finger at me, selecting me to put forth our unanimous doubt. I confer with my friends if I should really ask what we have come up with. They all nod a yes. Panditji, after hearing the prophecy, why did Kansa lock up Devki and Vasudev in a prison? I ask. Very good question, Beta. You mean you are wondering why Kansa simply didn't kill the two of them and avoid further risks to his life? Panditji goes on a different tangent altogether and continues to answer his own question. See, Beta, he loved his sister, Devki, so he could not kill her, and neither could he turn her into a widow by killing Vasudev. But then, he feared the arrival of Devki and Vasudev's child into this world. That's why he put them both in a prison, so that, as soon as their children arrived in this world, he could kill them one by one. No, no, Panditji, you didn't get it. Actually, what we want to know is this: if Kansa feared the birth of Devki and Vasudev's child, why did he lock the two of them up in the same prison at all? You know what I mean, the two of them in the same prison. As I clarify my question, I don't notice that the mic is right next to me, and that it is turned on.